Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rookie Pastors Podcast. My name is Kyle Neiman. So glad you could join us for this episode. Rookie Pastors Podcast is just all about casual conversations between real pastors about real ministry. And so I have a couple of pastors here with me today who are our normal hosts. You know, it's not like they're new guys or anything like that. So we got Josh and Bryan. Josh, Bryan, how you guys doing?
Doing well.
Good.
I didn't know if Bryan was going to go first.
I didn't either.
I'm doing.
I really should pitch to an individual.
That tension every time. Who's going to?
Yeah, Josh, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Good.
Doing pretty good.
At the time of recording this, we are just past Easter, and so really hope y'all had a great Easter Sunday. Also, at the time of recording this, it is one of my favorite sports seasons of the year. Baseball's back and in full swing. And then you have the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs going on. I love football season. I love that, but the mix of sports all at once and quality sports I really enjoy. And so I wanted to ask y'all to start off our episode with all these sports playoffs and stuff going on. What is your favorite sports moment to have watched as a fan? Favorite experience? And Josh, we'll start with you.
So I'm a DFW born and raised kid. So the 90s were great in regards to football and hockey. So I do remember the Cowboys run. I remember very clearly being in my living room. I remember building a pillow pallet. And since I did it the first year, you had to repeat it for good luck, all that kind of stuff. So the Cowboys really have me to thank for those wins. Yeah. So there's a lot within that. But for me, obviously, I'm a massive Texas Rangers fan. So the memory I have of the Rangers finally winning, based on all the disappointment that came in previous years that we don't need to talk about, that really is what's special to me. In fact, I still have, I will forever, as long as I can, keep the videos on my phone because we kept our boys up late to watch the game that they won. I mean, we had to quietly erupt because my daughter fell asleep. She tried to hang, but she couldn't. So, I mean, the Rangers are my thing. They're really all of our things for the most part, besides some other host who shall not be named right now. But we don't need to get into his stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's I'm sorry to be predictable, but that is will forever be my special moment.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's not just, it was when the Rangers won, but it's like what was surrounding that moment, right? It's like you brought your family together. I remember in that last game, my kids were in bed. I'm sitting there. I'm watching with my wife, and it's getting near the end of the game, and I'm like, I need to go wake up Walter, my oldest son. I'm like, I need to go wake him up. And she's like, go for it. So I went and woke him up, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, the Rangers are about to win the World Series. You gotta come out here. He's
immediately.
Okay.
Immediately I went to Dick's Sporting Goods, to buy the t-shirt. And it was great because the school sent out an email that was like, hey, in celebration of the Rangers. And I was like, my kids get to wear World Series champion gear. But I was, took forever to get through the line. I remember them coming over the intercom and they're like, hey, listen, our cash register shut down in about 10 minutes. And so we're sorry. We'll hold on to your merchandise. But if you don't make it through the line, we're sorry. There's nothing we can do about it. And I got in at 8 minutes. It was It was very stressful. Wow. But man, what a memory.
Bryan, what about you?
Yeah, my kids made fun of me that night because I cried. So, Josh, I'm like you. I grew up in Dallas sports and going to the Mavericks games when they were winning 9. And I'll never go to another Mavericks game again, I don't think. But that's the most kind of cricket. Mine is also when the Rangers won, but it's a little different. Mine wasn't game 5. Mine was game 1. And when Seager hit the game-tying home run in the 9th inning, and it was like, okay. And there's a moment, if you watch the video, and in fact, I was watching it yesterday for some weird reason, just because I could.
It's a daily ritual. You really should. Yeah. It's good for you.
And when he crosses the plate and he's walking back to the dugout, and there's a shot of Bruce Bochy, and you can just see on his face that he's like, we're winning the World Series. Like he knew in that moment. And when I saw that, I'm like, that's it. We're winning the World Series. And the rest was just beautiful.
That's awesome.
But that was my moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, that whole World Series run, there were a lot of great, just great moments. It was a lot of fun.
And the thing that makes that moment even better is the Fox guy, Joe Davis. Like that's an all-time classic call. When he's like high drive, it's tied. Like it's like wow. That's just one of those moments.
It was a good one. Yeah. It was a good one. I have so many. To rattle off, obviously I mentioned the World Series one. When the Cubs won the World Series, my whole family are big Cubs fans. My dad grew up a Cubs fan. And so, I mean, my grandfather lived his entire life never seeing the Cubs win a World Series. And then my dad, his whole life, my dad was alone in a hotel room across the country. And we're just like texting, me and my brothers and my dad, we're all apart. And like that moment made me cry just because I was like thinking about my dad, like, and I just want to be like around him and like hugging him because he was so happy about that. But it was a really cool day. My wife's family, they're all Cubs fans. That was really cool. But my biggest one was when the Giants won their first Super Bowl with Eli Manning. So I'm a Giants fan. Growing up in DFW like you guys, I of course am a Giants fan. That makes perfect sense. But I grew up a Giants fan. This is because of my dad, and I had lived, like you were saying, in the 90s watching the Cowboys just wreck shop on them, on a regular basis, and even through the early 2000s. And it was always Cowboys all the time. But I stayed true to the Giants, and I got to sit next to my dad at his house, sitting on the couch, just watching. I would go over for every playoff game during that run, and then when it got to the Super Bowl, it was just me, him, and my mom in the room, and my brothers were elsewhere. It was just us, and when the final seconds ticked off, we just both erupted, hugged each other. Just two big guys just jumping on top of each other. It was just a fun father-son moment, this personal moment for us. And I don't know, for me, like a lot of my just favorite memories with my dad, it sounds like he's not with us. He's still alive. Don't worry. But have been centered around sports. And so that's a really special one to me. So I love what sports does for us. It just brings us together. It brings out all these emotions, and I just thoroughly enjoy just all of that, just all of those moments. So thanks for sharing that, guys. Does that have anything to do with our discussion today? No, not at all. Not specifically, at least. But I just love hearing about that stuff. What we are talking about today, though, is how we engage in community. Engaging in community is kind of tough when you're wearing a Giants hat. So there's my transition right there.
Yeah,
crushed it.
Solid transition.
Nailed it. But we're talking about how we engage in community as pastors, as churches, because this is a really essential thing. And I think as rookie pastors, it's really easy to narrow our focus on the job at hand within the walls of the church. You feel very desperate to fix that, to work on that, to improve that. And before long, if you're not careful, your eyes can get off of the impact you need to be making in the community, not just for the sake of the growth of the church and the health of the church, but also just for the work of the gospel going forward. And so what I want to start out asking is, because I think this is a difficult thing for rookie pastors, is how do we even assess what the needs are in your community? Because every community is different. Every city is different. The needs are going to be different. What do you do to assess those unique needs about your community?
Well, I think, those are really great questions to be asking before you get to your church. but we're not there. We're past that. So, you just gotta get out there, like, and meet people and talk to people. And, I'm an introvert by nature, so that's really hard, to do that, but you just have to get out there and do it. And talk to, we have a thing that we all use. Kyle, you're going to talk about this. I know you are because you're really good at it. The 7 questions or the 7 interviews, and we're supposed to go interview influential people in town. And that's really a good way to know. But if you just get stuck in your office all the time, you don't know the needs, and know the people. And one of the ways we do things, my wife and I, is like, we just go observe people, like go to Walmart or go to the restaurant and just observe what's going on, observe how people are dressed, how they're interacting, that kind of stuff. And that'll tell you a lot about what the community needs.
Yeah, I think, you've got to be present in the community. And I think part of our challenge too here is so many churches are across multiple communities, like we're not, we're First Baptist Church, Cedar Hill, but probably over half of our people are coming from beyond the city limits. And so it's, I think it's helping the church, and we'll get into this more in a minute, but I think it's helping the church recognize the opportunities that are immediately around you, and reminding them, hey, this is where this is the heart of who we are, especially if the name of the city is part of the name of your church. Like we are First Baptist Cedar Hill. So yeah, we could do stuff with Midlothian or Mansfield. But we need to at first look at kind of what is around us in Cedar Hill. And I think even sometimes predictability is key for churches. So what are the predictable things that we can do? School partnership is pretty predictable, but man, it's a great thing. So let's figure it out. For us, Cedar Hill is great because the school district itself assigns churches to the schools. So you don't have to go and like find the closest school or ask them if you can. Like, it's really just the school district says, hey, this is your school. Go and help out however they might need you. So, predictability, it's not a bad thing of finding the opportunities that might be around you. You can get deeper into the weeds of some stuff. But I think just start with something, like figure out what is it that we can meet a need for? What is it that's kind of blatantly obvious to us, either because we see it as a major need or, we're wired as a church to meet that need. And then let's go and just do something, I think is like the biggest encouragement I can say in that front.
I think one of the things you said, Josh, is really vital. And this is one of the things I had to learn here at this church, was part of assessing the needs of the community is also assessing what you can do. It's one thing if you see, there's a huge need for food stability in these families, but if you don't have the resources or the manpower to put together a food bank or food distribution, then you can't do it. It doesn't mean that it's not a need that needs to be known, but it doesn't further what you're doing. Bryan mentioned the 7 interviews, and this is something that we learned or encouraged to do in the PAVE program through Texas Baptist. And so not something that I came up with. Please don't think I'm wise in coming up with this.
But you are wise. You just didn't come up with this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll take it. But what it is simply have 7 short interviews with individuals that are working in key areas in your community. So political leaders, chief of police, chief of the fire department, doctors, teachers, counselors, these key areas of that are already meeting needs in your community. Hearing from them gives you a very different lens on your community than you're going to get as a church. And even that you're going to get from asking your church members. You can ask your church member, what does this community need? And they're going to say, well, the crime is really high, or this problem is going on here. maybe you'll get some information, but you're not going to get quite as in-depth of information as people who see it on a day-to-day basis. I mean, interviewing teachers is a really big thing because they see these kids when they come in on a day-to-day basis, whether the kids are hungry, the kids are dealing with issues with family. They see these needs in a very heartfelt and visceral way. So don't be afraid and just have boldness to schedule these interviews and keep scheduling them until you have 7. And that was one of the things I really urged myself to do, because my first several emails, several phone calls I had was just yeah, I don't know. I got lots of I don't know if I have time for that. Let's see. I got brushed off a ton. Finally, I got a call back from our chief of police, who was new at the time. And he said, yeah, come in. And I asked him 2 questions. That's all we were asked to do with this interview, with these interviews, is basically, what are the needs you see in the community? And how do you see the church able to help you with those needs? That's it. And so I sit down. I'm a real rookie pastor. I'm very green, and I'm very nervous about this because I've never met with a chief of police before. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I sit down with him. I ask him these questions, and it went as good as it can possibly go, because it flourished into a friendship, a relationship that became the catalyst for us doing things in the community as a church. And it all started with me just asking these questions. And simply by asking the questions, what you're doing is not only assessing, but you're telling somebody else that you care about what they're doing, which goes a long way. Bryan mentioned this as well. You got to be out there. You got to be asking those questions, but be systematic about it. There are things, and as you were saying, Josh, there are things that people mention in the community, and we can't help them. It's not within our current skill set or current set of resources, but everything that we can do is about building relationships and being known in the community. Like for me, when I got to this church, one of the things I kept hearing in the community was, "Oh, is that place still open?" Which is a horrible thing to hear as a pastor of a church. And yes, we're still open. And so with that being said, Josh, what do you think are some practical ways that churches can build genuine relationships within their community?
So I became familiar with a church out of Atlanta, and although I might not agree with all of their theologies, I really love their heart for the community. In fact, that's their big thing is it's Gwinnett Church, and so it's called For Gwinnett, and their focus is being known more for what they are for than what they are against, because the reality is for the church, a lot of times we're known more for what we're against than what we're for.
That's right.
And our church strategically sits in the middle of one major thoroughfare in town. I mean, we're right in the downtown area, if you want to call it that. There's 6 businesses down here, but still it's called historic downtown Cedar Hill. We could be against commerce. We could take our ball and go home, and we could shut down our parking lots. We could not make them accessible to public use. We could protest every downtown event and not be part of it. Or we could do what we've been trying to do, which is say, listen, the reality is the community is bringing people to us, and we can either be there to embrace them, or we can be there and shun them, or we can just not be there at all. And so although this doesn't necessarily feed into the service side of community per se, as far as meeting needs, we can't meet the needs if the city doesn't trust us. We can't meet the needs if the city doesn't know who we are. And so we need to be known. We have to reassert ourselves into the public eye so that they can begin to trust us. Otherwise, I think the reality is that a lot of times our focus as Christians is to get people into our churches. And I don't think that that's wrong, but I think we should be more focused on getting people into the kingdom. And if we can care about their actual spiritual need, and a lot of times we can't get there until we take care of the physical needs or the emotional needs, then we're never going to they're not going to come to our church. But more importantly, they're probably not going to make it into the kingdom because we haven't really taken care of the real heart and soul need of the person. So being present, like just showing up to not just us individually as pastors, but as a church, being involved in that kind of stuff is big. And here's the big thing, because this is what we had to deal with as an established church. We had a major event every December that was near the timeline of something that was done for the city, but it wasn't partnered with it. And so it was painful. It was hard for some. We had to go through a grieving process for a few people, but we put it as part of what the city was doing. And so now we're actively sharing the gospel with families in a creative way, as part of what the city is doing. And so it's given us some great opportunities. Part of that was we now have a family who are members of our church because of an engagement that we did. A couple of them have been baptized as well because we were willing to engage something that the city was doing instead of saying, "Hey, come to us." We were there. So that makes big inroad, big opportunity for impact for sure.
Right. When you're a rookie pastor, a lot of the times you're going to be at a church that is not a mega church. I don't know. There might be some guys for their first pastor position is a massive church, and if that's the case, good luck. I mean, it sounds daunting. But you're going to be a smaller church, likely with less resources. To then look at what the community is doing and saying, well, we're going to do our own thing, is really sometimes a waste of resources because the community's already engaging in stuff. They're putting city funds, organizational funds into city programming. Why not be where they are? Use those resources. Your church is already paying those resources. Your church members are paying taxes to allow those things to happen. Use it for the glory of God. And so we determined, our mission as a church is to be a family for the community. We saw a lot of brokenness in families. We saw a lot of displaced families because of Lockheed Martin is a plant here. And so they draw people from all over the country who relocate their families locally here. And so we're like, we want to be a family. Not just within these walls, but outside these walls. People know that they can have a family experience whenever we're there. And then we said, if there is a community event going on and there is not something like directly that is impossible for us to be there, like, worship service on Sunday, Easter Sunday, it is, Christmas Eve service or whatever, whatever it might be, we're going to be at that community event. Whatever it is, we're going to be there and we're going to say, what can we do? You want us to sell snow cones? You want us to, put out kids crafts? You want us just to have a booth and encourage people? You want us just to be present? Do you want help with parking? You want help with this? What can we do? And so when the city says, yeah, come on, we're there. And so we've marched in the Christmas parade and been one of like 2 churches in the parade. There's far more churches in the community than 2. We show up at community events and we look around, we're like, we're the only church here. And we just try to be a constant presence. And that's not a competitive thing. I'm just saying we are ensuring that there is a kingdom presence anytime the city is doing something. We think it's important and it's an open door. And so that's one of the practical things. One of the practical things we do as a church is we just show up and are present, because I realized early on, again, we don't have the resources to do the big back to school event where we have 500 backpacks we're handing out. We can't do that. Even if we had the money, we don't have the people to do that. We're not going to do the fall festival that's going to have all the carnival rides and stuff like that. But we can be intentional with what we do, and everything we do being about how do we invest in this community well. So I would say if there's anything that the city is doing, partner with them in it as much as they'll let you, and be present with them. Ask your school district, what can we do? What can we do to help? So we partnered with a mentorship program that goes on in our school district. We provide snacks for a community and schools program. We can't provide, meals for these families, or anything, but we can provide snacks for when their kids are at school. So find those little avenues of what you can do and meet those needs is what I would say. I think the last thing I want to ask though is, as pastors, we're called to lead out in this. And so what does it look like, Josh, for you personally to model community engagement for your community? How do you yourself do that? Not just lead movements for the church. What are you doing to model that community engagement?
So I have a very loyal character. I probably give more benefit to the doubt than I should, and so I'm still a Cowboys fan. I was a Rangers fan forever. I was prone to disappointment. Maybe those sports are. Hey, listen, we're drawing back in that opening question. It prepared us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. See all that wisdom you have, but
there it is.
I feel like what the city needs from me, what the church needs from me, is loyalty. So I love, and I go fully in on it. So, we have a big statement. It's a big mural on the side of our building. It was brought about from just kind of a at home mission trip that we did early on when I was here, which is We Love 75104. The big question I'm asking now of the church is, okay, well, does the community know that we love 75104? Like, what proof is there in that? But that's what my family, we are engaged. Like, we could go to, we had a conversation with one of our kids recently about this is the reason why we're involved in this sporting or this league is because it's a local league and we want to be involved locally. We could go further out and it might look different. Maybe it'll even look better in some ways, but we want to be present with where we are. We want to be engaged. And, I think that if the community sees that you really care about the community, if you're able to live in that community, that is super helpful. And if you can't live in that community, man, just be present as often as you can. Yeah. Hopefully it'll take people by surprise when they find out you don't live in a community because they just thought you always been here, and that's part of it. I get it. Yeah. We're more transient in a way, but there's great opportunity in that. I think the other thing, I want to look at it from the church side too. For us to engage the community, when I got here, I don't know if we necessarily were ready. No, I don't. We definitely weren't ready to engage the community, because what I think would have happened is, had we gone and reached all these young families and brought them in, they would have been like, man, y'all ain't got nothing in order here. I think one of the questions we have to say is, would the community know that we love them by how we love one another? Because if we're not loving one another super well as a church, then we're going to bring people into chaos and something that's not genuine or kind or gracious. That was not the MO of First Baptist Cedar Hill, in case some of our church members are listening to this podcast. But if your church is not a loving environment, it's not a service-hearted place, you've got to deal with that first and foremost before you try and leverage anything to go and reach and minister and love the community. And so I think that that's really important. I'm wired that way. I would love for us to be doing more. I'm hearing what you're saying, Kyle, and I'm like, man, we are falling short as a church, but I think we've also taken major steps, which is good. But to me, it continues to show there's a lot more things that we need to do, because once again, my big beef with myself is, we've said we love 75104, but how much proof is there that we really do love this community? We need to prove it a lot more. And it really does, like you said, it does start with us. That's an important thing, that we are leading the way in that resolve.
I'm glad you brought up your church and what they're doing with, I love 75104. I've been inspired by that. It's one of the things that has really encouraged me personally. I don't know if I've ever told you that. I should, but I love that. I designed a little poster to go up in our welcome center, and it says, "We love 76108," our zip code. But to hear what you said, that's exactly one of the things I use that poster for. I'll have people come in and see that, whether it be our members or people outside the community, say, "Oh, I love that." And I'll always say the same thing. I said, yes, my hope is that people see that outside the building without a poster. that they know that outside the building without the poster. And it kind of is there as a reminder to me that this has to keep being a heartbeat for us. And I hope it becomes a reminder for our people of what we're supposed to be doing, rather than just saying, hey, we love you guys. You come in here and know that you're loved. I don't want it to be that. I want it to be more of a charge for our people. I'm also really glad you mentioned living outside of your community, because I don't live in the city limits. I live further away, and there's family reasons for that. We had a house in the other community. It's kind of hard to move and whatnot. And so there's circumstances where you might not be able to live in your community, but you're absolutely right. You have to be present in that community. And so it's a sacrifice my family makes, knowing that there's going to be some days where I'm going into work extra early. I'm missing out on some time at home. And so I have to work on that work-life balance, because it's so important that I'm engaged in the community. We have to put extra effort in that, which means I have to put extra effort in at home to make sure everybody's being cared for. It's a lot, but a couple of things that I do. One is I schedule evangelism into my calendar. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast or not at this point, but I every Thursday I spend time in the community and try to have at least one evangelism, conversation. And I schedule that in to remind myself, be out of the office and not just be doing errands for the church and the community, be out of the office, engaging the community for the sake of the kingdom of God. And then the other thing is I engage personally wherever I can. So I say yes as much as I possibly can. Again, mental health, family health is an important thing to balance here. Make sure you're having these conversations with your spouse. But I try to say yes as much as I can. If there's a school board wants someone to say a prayer before their school board meeting, I say yes. I can be there. We have a pastors coalition that meets with our city officials that really started because of the conversation that me and the police chief had. So now we have this pastors coalition. I'm there. I'm going to be there, present, hearing from these other pastors, hearing from city leaders and what's going on. So I try to model out what we were trying to do as a church. If there's anything going on, any community event where there's a church, if there's any open door for me personally as a pastor, I'm going to be there if at all possible. And that loyalty thing pays off, because people know that I'm available for that. People know that they can stop by my office and ask about some things going on in the community. People know that they can call our church and be like, hey, can we use your parking lot for something? I'm like, yeah, go for it. Absolutely. Whatever you need. Because they get to know me more, they feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling me. And it's paid off in big ways to where that's how we got a call from, I mentioned the snacks thing. That's how we got a call from the school. Was we were so active in the community. Somebody at the school who was not involved in our church said, hey, if this is an issue, have you thought about calling First Baptist? They're always doing stuff in the community. Like, that was a home run for us. Like, we might not be growing exponentially butts and seats right now, but the fact that somebody who's not in our church gave us as a recommendation to somebody else who's not in our church and said they care about the community, check with them. Like, it was a home run. That's what you got to do. Say yes when you can, as often as you can. Get your eyes out of just what's going on within these four walls.
Yeah. And you're going to have to coach yourself. You're going to have to coach your church too. I get
Absolutely.
I get so focused just naturally on the things around campus and the people and the needs. And so coaching yourself, whether that be allotting time each week, making intentional efforts to be engaged in the community, but also you got to coach your people. And I say you got to coach them on two sides. One is, listen, y'all hired me not just to be your pastor, like to be a pastor. Yeah. Like, I need to pastor this community. I need to reach this community. And so and this is hard, and I say that I am not doing this well, is like helping the people recognize that part of your responsibility is making these inroads, is making these connections with the community as a whole. But then also we got to be coaching our people that, yeah, maybe you don't live in the zip code, but that does not mean first and foremost that you shouldn't be discipling and ministering to the people around you. But two, that doesn't mean that you're exempt from the work that needs to be going on here within the community of partnering with us together. And so coaching the people and coaching yourself are going to be super important to moving forward on any of it consistently.
That's a good word. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort. It takes time. It takes intentionality. It takes flexibility. And one of the things that I did was I tried to set from the very beginning of me being here, like, I'm not always going to be in the office, but it doesn't mean I'm not working. I'm going to be out in the community doing things. You can always call me. I'm always available, during those office hours, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be sitting at this desk. I got work to do. Set that expectation, and hopefully, as you lead out in that, the rest of your church starts to see, well, I can do that in my day-to-day life. I can schedule that time. I can intentionally invest. I can say yes to these things in the church, and that's what we're starting to see here as this takes hold. And I pray that it'd be the same for pastors who are listening to this podcast as they're just learning how to engage in community themselves. Josh, anything to add before we wrap up this episode?
No, I do want like copyright money for the We Love whatever. If people start, jumping on that bandwagon, if your community falls under one zip code like Cedar Hill does, then just a Starbucks gift card.
Get my checkbook out here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Starbucks gift cards, okay, cool. Yeah,
I'll take it.
I'll text you one. Yeah,
I'll just yeah. You can take me to go get a burger.
Will do. Well, bummed that Bryan had to step out early. I'm sure he would have loved to be part of that conversation, but glad to get a little insight from him before he had to go. Josh, thank you for all of your insight and what you're doing there in Cedar Hill. Love hearing the stories of community engagement there. Thank you all for listening today. Do remember to follow us on all the social medias at Rookie Pastor Pod, except for X, which is just Rookie Pastors, at Rookie Pastors. So, and then leave us a comment, leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. I really enjoy. We've been getting comments from guys here or there, just thanking them, thanking us for the podcast. It's incredible encouragement for us what we're doing. So I really appreciate that. I know the other guys do as well. So thank you for your kind comments. And we know good ministry is going on. We just want to be a part of encouraging rookie pastors in this role. So thank you all for being a part of this community. Well, that is it for this week. We hope you have a wonderful week serving the Lord. Go be a blessing to others. Have a great week. Go Giants.